Welcome to Hub City Spokes, the podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs, artists, and other influencers. I'm Mike Jones, your host, and on this episode is Todd Knowlton. Todd is one of the founders and CEO of Smooth Fusion, a custom web and mobile app company. Todd, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, can you tell me a little bit about Smooth Fusion?
Sure. So we are, like I said, a custom web and application development company. We've been in business for a little over 18 years, and we are based here in Lubbock, which is awesome, but our customers are all over the place. We have some here locally, but a lot of our customers are spread all over the United States. Our first customer was Microsoft, and so we've been working for them actually since even before Smooth Fusion. And we've got about 26 folks or so, I think, right now, and growing, and things are going great.
Is your entire workforce here in Lubbock?
Nearly. We've got almost everybody here. We have 3 remote people, all 3 of which actually used to work here and have just moved to other parts of the country and continue to work for us.
Okay. Who is you mentioned Microsoft. Who is another typical customer for you guys?
So our work kind of comes in from two different spaces. On the sort of web and marketing side, a typical customer is a larger company that has a large budget to build a really nice web presence, or that their web presence maybe needs to integrate with some third-party systems and these kind of things. So it's a bigger project than a typical website build. So we've done a lot of work for folks like Hewlett-Packard, of course, Microsoft, Welch's, some insurance companies, Transamerica. We do a lot of work in the financial services space. And so most of those are websites and related web application kind of things. And the other half of our business is what we would really call enterprise web applications. So these are typically large business applications. It might be a HR system, a learning management system, but some kind of big piece of software written from scratch because the company was not able to get what they wanted off the shelf, so they decided to contract with us to build something custom.
All right. And for the geeks that are listening, what is your main technology platforms?
Okay. So we're a Microsoft shop, since Microsoft was where we got started. So we're a .NET shop. So C#, .NET, SQL backend. But on the front end these days, we're using all the modern front end technologies. Okay.
Client-side technologies, JavaScript-based libraries, that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely where the industry's going. And I want to say that Google's recent, well, to me it's recent, within the last couple of years, when they switched from the AngularJS to Angular 2, 3, 4, now I think it's on 6 or something like that. That platform is written using TypeScript, which is a Microsoft created library for object-oriented programming using JavaScript. So that's interesting to me that there's all this collaboration in that space to get things done. And I think that they're realizing more and more that they don't have to exclude each other to be competitive.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, even .NET's an open source these days.
Right. Yeah. Runs on Linux and Macs and everything. Yeah. Let's talk about, if you're comfortable doing so, kind of the size of jobs that you guys would engage in.
Sure. So for us, we're looking more for lifetime value of a client than we are particular job size. So we're not opposed to taking on smaller jobs, but typically on the website side, they're $60,000, $80,000 through $500,000. On the enterprise application side, they're in the hundreds of thousands and up. And of course, these jobs typically take a while to do.
Oh yeah.
Especially on the enterprise app side, those tend to just go on for many, many years often. On the website, it's typically, maybe there's a big design and development phase, and then we do a lot of ongoing maintenance and support as well. which is really what we think where we bring a lot of values, because we don't want to just build your website and drop you. We want to be there to support you into the future.
Right. Tell me the story of Smooth Fusion, if you would. I mean, I know you talked about it was 18 years ago, so 2000, 2001 timeframe, you and Brad Hunt, right?
Yeah, and really for it to make sense, I guess I got to go back all the way to when I got out of college. So I came up here because of Texas Tech.
Right.
I grew up in South Texas and came up here to go to Texas Tech, and never left. And so when I got out of school, I was a computer science major at Tech, and I decided I was in the software business actually in college, is why it took me so long to get out of college. But when I was approaching graduation, I got this idea that I wanted to author computer textbooks. And I went to work for a great guy that many people here in Lubbock know, named Bill Passwark. He is a professor emeritus from Texas Tech, and he had written many books at this point, and actually got the chance to go to work for him, kind of as a ghostwriter, working on his staff of writers. But my goal was to get to author my own books, and that happened in about '94. I got the chance to author my first book with what happened to be really the publisher with the biggest market share in the high school market. And so I wrote what really was the very first C++ high school computer science book that was written from scratch to be a high school book.
Oh, really?
All the others that were out there were college texts that were dumbed down a little bit to be a high school text. And so that book did really well, and Microsoft decided, and this is where Microsoft came into the picture. Microsoft wanted to utilize my book for some things they were wanting to do in the academic marketing space. And for those that understand computer languages a little bit, the background there is that high schools were all on Pascal. Well, Microsoft did not have a Pascal product. So when the high schools started to switch and the AP exam switched to C++, Microsoft saw the opportunity to get into that market.
Right.
And so they got a hold of my book and bundled their software with my book and built some programs at Microsoft around the content of my book, which was awesome. I was like 29 years old, and it was really cool. And I went to Microsoft for the launch of this whole set of programs they were doing, and spoke at their launch event. And it was the first time I'd ever been at Microsoft. It was a little bit smaller place in '96, but before I even got back on the plane, they asked me if I would build them a website.
Yeah.
And this was at a time when the web was really new. Literally walking through the halls at Microsoft, people were running live websites from computers under their desks.
Oh.
And because the market was still pretty small. In fact, what we built was a website aimed at K through 12 schools, mostly high school, and most schools didn't even have internet access to get to it. So we actually put all the content from the original website into newsletters and mailed them to schools as well. So that just started a series of opportunities. Microsoft never quit asking me to help them do things. And so at the time I was working at home from a home office, just writing books full time. But they kept asking me to help them do stuff. So I started hiring some help, and that's how I created my first web company back in '96, which was just Knowlton and Associates.
Right.
And then short version is when the .com boom came around, we got approached to participate in a roll-up of internet companies, what they at that time called interactive agencies. And it was really interesting. And of course, the .com boom was exciting and things were happening. I thought, well, I'm going to learn a lot no matter what. And so we participated in this roll up and became one of 6 companies that became a company called Full Moon Interactive, and based in California. And so that's when I learned what it was like to work with companies in California. And so basically, it's a good thing that I got into it to learn something, because that's about all I got out of it. But as that company, Full Moon's, became obvious it was not going to succeed, Brad, who's still with me, and a couple other guys, we decided maybe it was time to go start a new company and get out of Full Moon. And so we did, and that's when we started Smooth Fusion in January of 2001. Brought Microsoft with us as our first client, and then started adding other clients and growing from there.
That's a really interesting and kind of an amazing story of just doing, what you want to do, doing what you're passionate about, and just following it where it leads you, kind of.
Yeah, and I think that's, I'm a huge proponent of that. I think there's so much more than, you can chase dollars. A lot of people chase dollars, and there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But if you're not following something because you want to build it or you want to see it happen, then you're not going to be as successful, I don't think. And so, obviously I never intended to get into the web development business, because when I was in college, that didn't exist.
Right.
But the opportunity presented itself, and Microsoft pays their bills, and so it was a great opportunity to grow into that, and then found out I enjoyed the business. It's a challenging business, but as you know, and but it was a lot of fun, and continued to write as well, because writing was something that I was really interested in. So I continued to write books as I ran the business. And early on, I was living off book royalties, and because the profits from the business were still catching up.
Right.
So that really enabled me to fund the startup of my company without outside money.
Right. How many books have you written, do you think? Do you know?
I do know. So I wrote 20 computer books.
Right. Wow.
Some were programming books, some were general computer science type topics, or even how to use certain programs, because most of mine were either high school or college texts. I think I wrote one that was a kind of what we called a trade book, that you'd buy at a Barnes and Noble or something. But the rest were mostly, high school market. And then a few years ago, I decided I was through writing computer books. A few years ago, I got contacted by a editor I had worked with in the past, and she said, "Todd, I want you to write me a book." And I said, "Carol, I'm done writing computer books." She said, "Well, what do you want to write?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to write a financial literacy book for high school kids."
Oh, okay.
And so we did that. So my 21st book is still out there. It's a high school high school financial literacy book. So teaching kids everything from banking to loans to earning to things to avoid.
I guess if somebody wanted to, they could go on Amazon and buy some of these books, huh?
Yeah, they're not cheap, unfortunately, because they're textbooks. So textbook companies have this weird thing where if a regular person wants to buy their book, they're like $100.
Right.
But yeah, they're some of them are probably still on Amazon that shouldn't be, but because most of my computer books are really old by now.
Outdated. Yeah. Technology moves pretty quick. These days, I would suppose if you wrote a technology book, it would probably be out of date in 2 years.
Well, yeah. In fact, on the trade book side, they plan on a shelf life of about 6 months before they want to, and it might last a year depending on what it's on.
Right.
Unfortunately, actually, on the textbook side, they last longer than they should.
Sure.
I was getting royalties on books that I'd written 10 and 12 years ago. And I was like, please stop buying that book.
Tell me, let's go back to some of the early days of Smooth Fusion. I know even today, because we serve on the 1 Million Cups team together, and I'm kind of in, we're in some of the same circles, and I know some of the traveling and stuff you do. I know that you go to Redmond on occasion. Who are some of the people that you've interacted with at Microsoft, and what are you doing when you go there these days?
So it's changed a lot. Back in what you might call the heyday for our work at Microsoft was back when everybody at Microsoft had a budget and they were all spinning up websites that were all over the place on, domain names that they made up. Those days are kind of over, and so everything's very much more consolidated, onto Microsoft.com, and which we build on Microsoft.com, but that whole world has changed a lot. And so Microsoft is a very small part of our work now. We do still work. In fact, we signed a deal last week while we were out there. But so, we've interacted with, in the early days, those sites we were working on, the team we were working with would go present directly to Bill Gates. But, that was a much different place back then. Now it's, the work for companies like us are is typically pretty fringe type projects where, they've got a site that's, maybe in marketing some little corner of the Windows sphere,
right.
And they need a website spun up. Like I say, those just don't come up as often as they used to. But it's been, it was a great ride, great opportunity. I actually know more people, business contacts in the Seattle area than anywhere.
Right.
Because even though we don't work as much for Microsoft as we used to, those relationships have built up to where we do more work in the Northwest than anywhere.
Sure.
And so when we go up there these days, we're usually visiting a whole variety of folks, from insurance companies to we work with a really cool company in Portland that does high-end audio equipment called Biamp. We work with a company that does the things inside an airplane, like the lights on the floor and the where you plug in your laptop or whatever, and it's called Astronics. So we've got and we work with a lot of marketing agencies up there that need us to help with sort of the technical work for projects that they're landing.
When you're interacting with these folks in other areas, does anybody ever find it odd, or does it even cross their mind that you're in Lubbock, Texas doing this stuff? Yeah,
it's interesting. It's a mix. Some people just assume that Lubbock is a suburb of Dallas or something. They have no idea where we really are.
Sure.
But we actually like to tell the story, and so we look for those opportunities to explain to somebody, hey, we're actually 6 hours from Dallas. And in fact, I had a client in Washington, D.C., that called me one day, and he's like, hey, Todd, I'm going to be in Houston next week, and I've got a car, so I'm going to drive out and see you. I said, great, Ron, that'll be awesome. I said, now, that's probably 9 or 10 hours away. He had no idea. But it does give us the opportunity to explain. And what's interesting, we were just out in Portland and Seattle last week, and a lot more people knew about Lubbock because of a little basketball game. We got that everywhere we went. Like, aren't y'all where Texas Tech is? So people are learning more all the time, and it gives us the opportunity to tell why we're there and the advantages of being where we are.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of those advantages. What do you feel like this community offers to business people and startups, entrepreneurs, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's obviously better than it's ever been at this point. For us, it's been a really interesting place for us to be based, because regardless of where we are based, we were going to have clients that were distant from us.
Right.
And so by being in Lubbock, it forced us to learn how to do things in a remote fashion, even back, in the 90s. And so you sort of removed that from the equation early on, and didn't really matter where our clients were located. We were set up to work with them. And then beyond that, at the kind of work we do, our competitors are in places like Seattle and San Francisco, and so is a huge competitive advantage for us, because we are, obviously much lower cost here.
Sure.
We've got, when we find people who want to do the kind of work we do, we tend to hang on to them, because, obviously, people that live in Lubbock generally live here for family reasons, or some kind of reason beyond just looking to make the most money, maybe.
Yeah, they didn't follow a job here per se.
Yeah, maybe not.
They chose to be here.
And we've been able even to bring people back to Lubbock that had lived here, went off. Our vice president of development, Janae, she worked in Austin for IBM, was ready to get back to West Texas, so able to do that. So for us, it's been really interesting. Centrally located, we've got clients on both coasts. In fact, most of our clients are probably on a coast. So being centrally located is great. The airport's great. I tell people all the time, I think I can fly somewhere faster than somebody that lives in the suburbs of Dallas, because I can be in Love Field or DFW probably faster than they can.
Yeah, right.
I get up, and I live in
a 45-minute flight.
Yeah, and I live in shallow water. I don't even have to drive through Lubbock to get to the airport.
There you go.
So and of course we can fly east or west out of here. So there's a lot of advantages for us in terms of just location, and of course talent pool with Texas Tech. A lot of our employees came out of Texas Tech or Lubbock Christian. We've got, obviously with my work here with the Innovation Hub, we've got opportunities to meet lots of people that can help us in lots of ways. And so, I think it's a community. Well, like for instance, last week I went and actually presented at the Seattle 1 Million Cups. We have 3 times the attendance that the one right there in downtown Seattle has. And so, but I think that's because I think there's a willingness here to collaborate and help each other and work with each other to support what's going on in businesses here. And maybe in those bigger markets, there's not as much of that, because they don't feel the need to hang together as much.
Yeah, they're more protectionist.
Yeah.
Where we're more collaborative, I think.
So.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the Innovation Hub, which I'm very familiar with. What are some other ecosystem resources available to startups here, and really some of the programs that the Hub offers?
Yeah, so as far as the Hub, there's a lot of great programs. Everything from the weekend startup, what we call Red Raider Startup, which is a weekend startup sleep deprivation thing. I don't know. Great fun though, just to take an idea, vet that idea, get out there and build a business plan, and be ready by Sunday to present it to a panel. Great fun there. We've got a variety of business plan competitions, and then obviously the big one is the accelerator program that where we actually fund, in large part thanks to Lita, a whole group of teams, get them out there with a little seed money to do the customer discovery and things they need to do. And so I think over the years we're going to see some really amazing things come out of these accelerator teams. That are coming through. And so anybody interested in entrepreneurship would be crazy not to plug in here at the Hub and see what's available, because my official role here, I'm one of the directors of mentors that work with the mentor team here, and that's an amazing group. We've got, I think, 43 or 44 mentors right now that, are available to mentor these accelerator teams. They come to Red Raider Startup. They read the business plans from iLaunch and these kind of things. And so you get access to people that have been there and done that, and that are willing to share. And so, there's some great stuff.
In a large part, these mentors, they're not like Texas Tech faculty, right? I mean, these are...
Some are, but it's a neat mix. There's definitely some Texas Tech faculty on there. There's, business people, founders themselves, some who have founded and exited and are just kind of in that giving back part of life. But there's also folks that are active CPAs, marketers, so amazing set of resources, and we can match mentors to the needs of the mentee.
I think that's a fantastic offering, right? I mean, how many environments are there, especially for a major university like Texas Tech, to bring in business people who are just giving their time, entrepreneurs,
absolutely, it's all volunteer,
startup founders. And simply to help, right? To guide people and hopefully, prevent some young companies from making some mistakes.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about. Is everybody's going to experience failures in entrepreneurship, and we can help them, avoid the bad kind of failure.
Sure.
There's the good kind of failure is learning early that there's not a product fit or a market fit for my product or whatever. Right. We can help them, because that's one of the biggest things we do, even in the accelerator program, using the lean startup methodology to really help them hone in on who's your customer, what's that minimum viable product that you can get out in the market with and start to grow, because that's really counterintuitive. Most entrepreneurs want to just start building, start selling, see what happens, and you really need to have that discipline up front to do that customer discovery.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs are more, I've got the idea, so let me make it. And I've certainly done that myself.
Sure.
And
well, we're anxious to build, and there's no entrepreneur out there that's going to tell you that they've followed those principles perfectly, because we all have that. I think it's part of being an entrepreneur is you're just anxious to build something and get it out there, and that's just unfortunately an approach that can lead to failure when it didn't need to.
Right. I think if you have a great idea and you can validate the idea, then having the knowledge to go along with it is tremendous.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit, we did recently, just now, we finished talking about avoiding mistakes, right? Learning from others. So what do you wish you could go back to 2001 and tell Todd Knowlton back in those days?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned, especially in the .com thing that we went through, we were attempting an IPO in the .com boom, and what I learned through that process, I think that was the biggest thing, is that the people that you look at that you say, oh my goodness, they're so successful and they've got it all together, generally don't really have it all together. And you can compete better than you think you can. And, the fact that I stumbled into Microsoft as a client, really helped me see that too, because it's easy to sit back and think, a big company like Microsoft, everybody there's brilliant and everybody there's got, and it's just not true. They're a bunch of people too, and a bunch of teams. Some are good, some aren't good. And so I think younger entrepreneurs need to understand, I think, two things. One is you can compete better than you think you can, and don't be afraid of going up against a big company. In fact, you might have an advantage over them in a lot of cases. I think the other thing sort of related to failure is that your life as an entrepreneur is going to be a series of failures, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I kind of look at it like maybe the analogy is, in the stock market, if the stock market goes down, you haven't lost any money unless you sell.
Right.
And so I feel like you haven't failed unless you quit.
Right. Sure.
Because like even the .com thing, that I went through, that, obviously that didn't come together and it ultimately failed for everybody involved. But the lessons there and the things I learned there helped us build Smooth Fusion to be a different kind of company. Yeah. And so I think that's important to realize is, in fact, when I meet an entrepreneur that's experienced nothing but success, I actually worry about them.
Right.
Because I feel like when the first bump comes, chances are there's not enough discipline underneath that success yet, because they haven't had to learn those tough lessons, and that's kind of what was going on in the .com boom. These companies, it was just too easy back then. If you put the word internet in your name, or .com at the end of your company name, people were just throwing money at you, and there was no discipline in those companies. And like even Full Moon, the story they tell is that, when the .com boom happened, lost all our clients and all this. That's really not what happened. There was no discipline in the, they didn't know their numbers. They didn't, and of course I was the smallest of the 6 companies that rolled up into this thing. So I had no real say in how things went. But, without that, if they had done a more disciplined approach, I think the company could have survived the .com crash. I mean, technically Smooth Fusion, we started right before the crash. And then when we were 9 months old, 9/11 happened and the economy went south there, and, we plowed right through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quickly, I want to ask you something that I try to ask everybody that sits in that seat, and that is, what would you like to ask other folks that are in your position, sitting in that seat? What should I ask them? What does Todd Knowlton want to learn about them?
Wow. So this is a question I ask a lot of people. I spend a lot of time mentoring college students, but I think this is a question for everybody. Is I like to ask the question, when you're on your deathbed, what's going to matter that day? Because I think entrepreneurship has a way of distracting us sometimes from our real purpose or why we're really here on the planet, and what's really going to matter then. Whether you stayed at the office late to finish that proposal or whatever is not what you're going to be thinking about when you're at the end, and so that's a question I like to ask, because I believe that whatever the answer is to that question, you need to start there and work backwards to today.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great question. That's a great question. And I've read lots of business books, and there's 10,000 different business books, which kind of is indicative that there's no real secret to success, right? I mean, you got to do what works for you. But one common thread is that servant attitude, right? Is what I'm really wanting to do is I'm really wanting to serve other people and help other people. And I think that drives a lot of entrepreneurs. Last question. So what can this ecosystem do for Todd Knowlton or Smooth Fusion? Well,
that is a good question. One of the things that we just launched is a incubator for software companies called Fusion Innovation Labs. And so trying to get the word out about that a little bit, because we realized that we, in our team at Smooth Fusion, have a lot of experience that could help folks that want to start a software company be successful with, whether that's with the typical things like customer discovery and all of that, but also with good design, smart implementation, ongoing support and all that. And so, we're looking to meet folks who are interested in building software companies as a entrepreneurial venture. You know, we're not looking for ideas. We're looking for entrepreneurs that we can help.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's great. If we get the opportunity, I'd love to have you back at another time maybe and have a conversation about that.
That'd be awesome.
All right, Todd, thank you for taking time out of your busy day
thanks, Mike.
to come and talk to us. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hub City Spokes is presented by the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance and produced in partnership with Hamill Brothers Studios. A special thanks to the Innovation Hub here at Texas Tech University for hosting us. To hear more from our creators and catalysts, visit lubbockeda.org/podcast.